You can hear Gene Hackman's distraught dogs barking as cops approach the home where the Hollywood legend and his wife were found dead. The Santa Fe Sheriff's Department released chilling body cam video showing deputies peering through the windows at Hackman's multi-million-dollar home.
Did you take off again?
Yeah, close. She's hungry.
You remember Betsy? Was that her name, Betsy?
Betsy.
You remember her saying that?
Yeah, because no, they're just they're really rough with Gene, and Betsy's the one that dealt with all the dogs.
As you can see, new body cam has been released of the moment Joey Padilla arrives at the Hackman home. Padilla is the owner of pet daycare Santa Fe Tales, who often boarded and looked after Hackman's 3 dogs, Bear, Nikita, and Zinna, while Hackman and Betsy were away. Padilla arrived at Hackman's home to care for the dogs and meet with detectives. In the body cam, Padilla can be heard commenting that the dogs were hungry and seen throwing dog food onto the driveway while one animal, still skittish, looks on from a distance. Padilla confessed that while Arakawa was a nurturing mother, Hackman wasn't as popular with the poochers. The shop owner revealed on the tape the dogs were really rough with Gene. It's not clear whether Hackman was simply quite fragile around the big animals, and you'd think at 95 he would be. I mean, he could barely stand on his own, or if the dogs were jealous of Betsy's attention. He said Betsy was the one who dealt with the dogs. Gene didn't do anything with the dogs. Again, probably because he was very old. I mean, he could barely walk. The chance of him tripping over one of the animals, and I know I have a dog in my home, they often run in front of your feet. Well, that was likely an ongoing concern. Interestingly, the Hackmans' privacy was such a priority to them that Gene Hackman apparently bought a parcel of land beside a garbage dump so that he could cycle outdoors in private without any looky-loos to deal with. What's also really interesting is in the months before the deaths of this couple, something happened that was very kind of unusual and may have actually exacerbated stressed the couple out more than otherwise would have been. And we're going to be dealing with that in this episode.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Susan Medore, who worked for Hackman for 27 years, spoke at a Santa Fe hearing, and she revealed the lengths the couple went to maintain their privacy, especially in their final years. And it included, as I mentioned earlier, the actor purchasing a plot of land next to a garbage dump so he'd have a secluded place to ride his bike. Medore said via the New York Post that Hackman wanted the privacy of being able to ride his bike without anyone observing him or following him. Now, something else that likely stressed the couple months before his death was a network that insisted on doing an interview with him. Now, you can imagine, he's going to all of this trouble to be private, and then kind of out of the blue, a network comes along and they want to do some sort of story on him. Now, according to V103iHeart.com, Medore also revealed that Hackman denied a request for an interview about his life and career months prior to his death, to which the network allegedly told him that they planned to go ahead with their coverage regardless. Now, I must say, in a way, it's a shame that Hackman didn't allow this interview, because it certainly would have given us a sense of who he, like an updated current sense of who he was and what was going on, and perhaps how their whole lifestyle, right? And so that's unfortunately not there. But the fact that they really didn't want this to take place, and then the network wanted to go on regardless, you can imagine how stressful that must have been in sort of recent, in the last sort of recent period. How stressful that must have been. It was probably like a mini nightmare scenario leading up to the fatal one that claimed the couple's lives. And one wonders if the stress of that and the distraction of that and dealing with that didn't aggravate the situation that was to follow. And perhaps because they had to focus on that, the couple didn't really focus on other things, such as, I don't know, cleaning the garage and dealing with their health and dealing with one another and noticing what was going on with one another. In any event, when I told Jean and Patsy, they were horrified, Mador said, revealing that the project was ultimately pulled after she pleaded with the network. Hackman's family filed a temporary restraining order with the Santa Fe court to block images or videos of the couple deceased, those particular images, from being released publicly earlier this week. I must say, I can't really imagine those sort of images doing the rounds. How is that in the public interest? The family also argued that the 14th Amendment granted it the right to grieve without Hackman's post-mortem photos being shared publicly. It does kind of make you think there's this sort of ghoulish interest in this particular case. Meanwhile, after it was earlier claimed that neither Hackman nor Betsy's remains had been claimed from the morgue in Santa Fe, and there's apparently not been a funeral either, more than a month now after their passing, it seems their names have since been removed from a website listing unclaimed decedents. According to People, Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Hackman's names have been removed from a list of unclaimed decedents on the New Mexico Office of the Medical Investigator, that particular website. It's still not actually clear whether the bodies have been claimed or not, and Hackman's rep has declined to comment on this to People. It's also been clarified that despite earlier saying that Betsy likely died on February 11th, that's been updated now to February 12th. Now, in terms of the Santa Fe Sheriff, Aiden Mendoza, we saw him in the Rust incident dealing with the Alec Baldwin case. By the way, the trailer is already out in terms of that movie. He updated the projected date of Arakawa's death after reviewing a doctor's claim that he received a call from her on February 12th, one day after the medical examiner's originally concluded date of her death on February 11th. So can you see sometimes mistakes are made, even by intelligent folk like the medical examiner? And I think what's really interesting is it appears that Betsy died on the same day that she actually called the doctor. And she called the doctor to cancel an appointment. And so Mendoza said on Good Morning America on March 18, that would indicate to me that she was seeking medical advice or medical help and may not have been feeling well. Well, that's true. On March 17, Dr. Josiah Child, who leads Cloudberry Health in New Mexico, told the Daily Mail that he received a call from Arakawa, who's 65 years old, on February 12th. Mrs. Hackman didn't die on February 11 because she called my clinic on February 12. She'd called me a couple of weeks before her death to ask about getting an echocardiogram, that's a heart scan, for her husband. So clearly there were health issues, right, taking place, ongoing health issues for Gene Hackman and then also for herself. The doctor also claimed that Arakawa had called to schedule an appointment for her own unrelated respiratory problems. She was not a patient of mine, but one of my patients recommended Cloudberry to her, he said, before claiming Arakawa cancelled her appointment due to Hackman 95 feeling ill. So it's quite ironic that on the day that she was trying to sort of take care of herself, she cancelled her appointment and then she died, right? And it does make one wonder, why was Hackman feeling ill? Was it heart-related? Was it something else related? So Arakawa apparently called back on the morning of February 12th and spoke to one of our doctors who told her to come in that afternoon. We made her an appointment, but she never showed up. She did not show any symptoms of respiratory distress. That's really interesting, is that during that call, there was no sign of, they couldn't hear respiratory distress. And so the onset seems to have been quite suddenly in the afternoon of February 12th. What's also made explicit here is that that the appointment wasn't for anything related to hantavirus. Now, Hackman was reported to have died of hypertensive cardiovascular disease with Alzheimer's as a factor, while Arakawa was reported to have died from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. That's according to the New Mexico State Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Heather Jarrell. Officials have reiterated that foul play was not suspected in Hackman and Arakawa's deaths, and the scene was tested for carbon monoxide, with only a minute leak found that was deemed to be insignificant. Now, you might remember they initially made this blanket statement that there was no carbon monoxide whatsoever. That's now also been updated to there was a leak, but it's sort of like, well, there's a minute leak, right? Tiny little leak doesn't really mean anything. Now, if we recap what's gone on, if we review this case, there have been many other errors in the investigation thus far. And so I can't help wondering, ahead of the full toxicology report coming out, have additional errors been made? Isn't it too soon to exclude anything? Because what I remember is they excluded the carbon monoxide thing really, really early. Now, even if hantavirus was a factor, isn't it possible it could have been a factor in combination with something else that may have undermined Betsy's respiratory health, such as a carbon monoxide leak? Think about it like this. Gene Hackman dies of a heart condition, but that is aggravated by Alzheimer's, right? It's not just his heart condition, there's another aggravating factor. Well, couldn't something like that be the case with Betsy, that there was a respiratory issue, right, aggravated by something else, and perhaps that something else was carbon monoxide? I'm just saying, isn't it a little bit early to absolutely definitively exclude anything before the toxicology comes out? After all, the carbon monoxide thing is the very first thing officers arriving at the scene thought, suspected, and verbalized when they arrived.
We got to figure out what's going on first. My concern is a carbon monoxide issue.
I'm not going to take it further than that. Look out for episode 3 or part 3 in the Ramsey series, A History Lesson. If you haven't watched any of those, I do recommend you start catching up on that series. There are going to be quite a few episodes. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.